Bjergsen is on fire right now. He is constantly proving that he can carry 4 deadweights to LCS championships, which means us mortals have no excuse when it comes to carrying our 4 deadweights in gold elo. It's a small joke, relax. Yes, TSM is filled with all good players, who are carried by Bjergsen. For this guide, instead of showing how to turn around losing matchups, we'll show you how Bjergsen bullies a challenger assassin into submission with very basic fundamentals that we can all do. The matchup is Bjergsen on Lucian versus a Qiyana, a standard range versus melee matchup. Let's cover both of their missions so we know exactly what we should be expecting. For Lucian, mission 1 is to get the push lead. As a ranged champion, this is a no-brainer and easy to accomplish. Mission 2, harass Qiyana whenever she tries to last hit during your slow push. And Mission 3, reap the benefits of a big crash. This changes from game to game, but you have so many options in these matchups when you crash that early wave into their tower. You can roam, cheat a recall, or just blast them with harass under the tower as they try to last hit. It just depends on the game's specific circumstances. Therefore, Qiyana's mission should reflect what Bjergsen wants to do. Her first mission is to thin the wave. Before Bjergsen achieves his crash, the smaller the crash, the less time the ranged champion has to harass, roam, or recall. Mission 2, as always, is to give up CS and preserve health. Going down 10 or even 15 CS during that early laning phase is totally acceptable. This is your weak point, so don't throw because you want to hit that 14 gold caster creep. And Mission 3, play aggressively once you have your combo unlocked. If the assassin preserves their health and waits for level 3, then they can usually just hard force onto the ranged enemy. Thinning the wave so they can't leave lane and retaining most of your health are the most important goals in allowing you to do this. Alright, let's jump into the game. At level 1 we immediately see Bjergsen actively not auto attacking the wave. Do you know why that is? Basically, if you're guaranteed to get the push lead no matter what because of your matchup, then you shouldn't be auto attacking the wave at all. This allows it to stack as slowly as possible and as big as possible to get the biggest crash that you can get. Of course, if you're in a matchup where it's not guaranteed that you'll get the shove, then you should obviously be auto attacking instantly to ensure that you can get that push lead. Qiyana does something weird during this early lane as well. She actually started E, tried to force a trade onto a Lucian, and needless to say, she doesn't win it. This was bad for so many reasons, but we'll be covering that towards the end of the guide where we discuss everything Qiyana did wrong during this lane phase so you can learn how to play this matchup from both sides. Bjerg now goes back to only auto attacking for last hits, so he can get that big crash that we referred to last time. This may also sound a bit obvious, but the longer the wave is in this slow pushing state, then the longer your opponent has to screw up. League is generally a game about punishing your opponent's errors, and putting them in situations where they'll likely mess up is always a good idea, especially in NA solo queue. And mess up is exactly what Qiyana does. She overextends for that juicy 14 gold caster creep and takes a massive chunk of her health for very minimal gain. This is now the time for Bjerg to begin spam auto attacking. He's on the 3rd wave and this is where you want to crash, since it's a cannon wave. You'll want to do this as quickly as possible so you give the melee champion minimal time to thin out the wave. Qiyana then oversteps yet again trying to thin the wave, so Bjerg gives up this melee creep to chunk her down hard. Okay, so Bjergsen managed to crash the 3rd wave, so what do you think he should do with this crash? The immediate thought would be to cheat a recall and come back to lane with an extra Doran's Blade and freeze versus the low health Qiyana. But that isn't possible in this specific case. The reason why is that Qiyana constantly walked up to thin the wave. She didn't do it properly, of course, but she did technically thin the wave at the expense of her health. With this weak of a crash, if Bjergsen tried to cheat a recall, then it's way too likely that Qiyana will be able to crash as well before he gets back to lane. He would just be handing her a free reset, which is clearly not ideal and something that Bjergsen isn't going to do. So he stays and follows the reliable mission game plan in these matchups. With this crash, he will look to harass Qiyana under the tower and then set up a freeze that she cannot break. Notice how he's also hugging the left side of the lane, matching where his jungler is? This way he doesn't have to ward and give up pressure while Qiyana is last hitting under tower. This is especially useful when baiting counter ganks. Echo looks to come mid, but Bjergsen is just leading him right to his jungler. He even steps out of the brush and baits Echo into dashing right on top of him, immediately prompting both enemy flashes in a desperate getaway. Alright, so this would only work in high elo, right? No jungler is going to set up a perfect counter gank in low elo. Fair, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. Playing on your jungler side of the map is a basic fundamental that generally leads to more counter gank possibilities since you're always ready to run towards them. But what if your jungler is doing krugs and having zero impact on the map? What do you do then? Well, in those cases, playing on the side of the map that your jungler is on isn't even useful. Since they're not actively playing in the river and providing vision, then you can just die from that side anyway. In those cases, after you crash your third wave, you can look to set up a ward on the opposite side of where the enemy jungler started. For example, if you saw the enemy bot lane leash, then set up a ward on the top side of the river. Then just play on that side of the lane while continuing to harass the melee laner. You do lose momentary pressure this way since the enemy gets to last hit for free for a while you're off warding, but it's obviously better than dying. Anyway, after the counter gank, Bjergsen pushes in the next wave and then he recalls. He mostly did this since he was on only 800 gold at the moment, but he wanted to base with at least 900 gold. He has a slight problem with this base though. Ideally, he goes Vampiric Scepter here. Sustain is incredibly powerful against assassins. Generally, they want to do one quick combo to get you to 70% health and then all in you. With a sustain item, Bjergsen can shrug off any harass and creep aggro he may take and always stay at 100% health. Assassins usually don't have the damage to 100 to 0 someone before they get fed. But the enemy team composition is full of squishy targets, and you don't want to go Borg on Lucian versus a ton of squishy enemies, and the ideal build path here is rushing Muramana. Bjergsen, the wise man that he is, instead of going pickaxe and rushing Muramana ASAP, he delays it and builds an extra Doran's Blade and a Coal. This almost mimics the lifesteal that he would get by rushing Vampiric Scepter, but it also gives him additional health, making it even harder for Qiyana to ever find an all-in on him. Okay, so this is a bit Lucian specific, so how can we take this concept and translate it over to a typical mage mid laner? Well, let's say that as a mage, you also based on around 900 gold versus an assassin. Instead of buying 2 amplifying tomes and a health potion, you should instead look for another Doran's Ring, Dark Seal and a refillable potion. It's okay to delay your core build versus assassins, since not dying is usually the win condition versus them, since you'll outscale them quickly if they never manage to kill you. Once Bjergsen is back in lane, he's got a free setup for him due to the bounce back from his prior crash. We can see Nidalee has all of her camps up, and as a farming jungler, she's likely about to fall clear. Bjergsen correctly adapts and just goes ahead and wards like we recently discussed, and will now play on that side of the lane. Now he sets up a freeze, which is the ideal lane state versus melee champions if you can maintain it. Usually it requires the melee being chunked so they can't contest it too well, but Bjergsen had a really solid base so he can just force this freeze regardless. His item choice becomes pretty relevant here as he has to tank a creep and Qiyana harass every now and then, but he has a large health pool and plenty of sustain to work with, so it's not much of an issue, even if he messes up a bit here and there with his trades. Qiyana also makes a very basic error that should never really happen in high elo. You should always be aware that your opponent is likely to hit level 6 off the 5.5 minute cannon wave if they've missed almost no experience. She was standing way too far up in the lane for this timing and gets blasted by Bjergsen, solidifying an already huge lead. With Qiyana this far behind, the lane is definitely over and Bjergsen once again goes off and hard carries this game, no problem, and as always it looks way too easy for him. So let's take a look back at what Qiyana shouldn't have done to allow herself to get into such a disastrous position in the first place, and the mistakes that you should definitely be avoiding if you're on the melee side of this matchup. For starters, why is she starting E at level 1? This is the equivalent of starting E on Katarina or Echo at level 1 to win an early trade. Even if she hypothetically won this trade, which isn't even possible, it doesn't even matter. She's giving up her early wave clear abilities, so Bjergsen could just shove her in and then reset or harass anyway. There's just no point in doing this since damage is meaningless unless you can convert it into something. This then forces her to take a ton of damage then in the wave when she didn't need to. Qiyana is actually one of the better assassins at dealing with these types of matchups. With her QWQ giving her double AoE range wave clear, it's pretty insane for last hitting and thinning waves from a distance. Done properly and on the third wave crash, the wave would be much smaller and she would be nearly full HP. It's hard to harass or get a cheater recall off in a lane state like this, and she would be well on her way to fighting back once she's level 3. But players unfortunately don't think ahead and they only focus on what's in front of them immediately. And of course, if a challenger Qiyana is making these kinds of mistakes, then think about how many mistakes the players you're up against are making. Not one of us is as good as Bjergsen, but you likely don't need to be to dominate assassins this easily.
By the way, you should know where these videos come from. Our hyper improvement platform Skillcapped is by far the best place to be if you want to actually improve at League of Legends. You can input your rank before you sign up and see where we think you'll climb to. If you don't reach that rank while actively using Skillcapped, you can claim a full refund. That's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped or you get your money back. We offer this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't, you shouldn't have to pay for it. So be sure to check us out after this.
So that wraps up this guide. We hope you're as excited for Worlds as we are, and as always, thanks for watching.